This is the famous Majorel Blue, which you might have heard of from the famous Majorel Garden. And today, we're gonna try to recreate this bright, beautiful blue in an oil painting. The only problem is, this rich blue is actually a trademark color by the government of Morocco, which means its exact composition is legally protected in Morocco, and the only way to obtain it is to buy it from the Majorel Garden in acrylic. Except that wasn't gonna stop me from trying to capture its essence in an oil painting. And you're gonna get to see the full process behind this painting. First, I needed to quickly head to the art store for some supplies, because through my extensive research, I found that ultramarine blue is the closest blue to the Majorel Blue, but I guess we'll have to see about that. Once I got back home, I taped this mini gouache painting on the wall for guidance and made sure to not look at it even once. Next, I did a quick underpainting in burnt sienna just to have an idea of where I was going to place everything. Once that was done, it was time to start experimenting with the Majorel Blue. I simply mixed the acrylic paint with some chopsticks that were conveniently lying around and put it in a little container so it would be easier to manage. And then boom, I started applying the paint on the parts which will be the wall of the house, the sidewalk, and the fountain. I definitely get nervous when trying something for the first time like this because I don't know what to expect, and my whole life I've been taught to be a perfectionist and get good results, so it's an enormous challenge to let go of that and just accept that I won't know what will happen. Once it was dry, this is what the blue looked like. I realized the acrylic blue had dried too dark and it wouldn't be as easy as I thought to get the right shade of blue if I just use acrylic, so I went to work on finding the closest match in oil paint. I checked the accuracy of what I'm mixing by holding it as close as possible to the picture, and I even asked ChatGPT how to mix Majorel Blue in oil paint, and it said to try to apply in multiple layers to get the right vibrancy. And let's not forget to hydrate while we work. And boom, right back to work. No fooling around here. We have work to do. Except I realized that I painted the lady too big and I had to go in with the underpaint again to make her smaller before I ruined everything. Once that was taken care of, it was time to start working on the actual garden, as in the beautiful different species of cacti. One of my goals is to try to make my paintings almost 100% a la prima, which means painting only in one layer of oil paint and no more adding highlights or anything once it dries. I wanted the sky to have random visible brush strokes in all the directions, so that's why I modified it again. Since I wanted to work as fast as possible, I continued working on the jungle and started working on the ground as well. I think in the future, if I want to work a la prima, I'm going to just start on one side of the painting and work my way out instead of working on one bit at a time, then having it dry and working on another disconnected bit. I was really happy with how vibrant the blue was looking by just using ultramarine blue and a bit of white. Maybe the Majorel Blue wasn't as hard to mix as I thought. Oil paint usually takes 2 to 3 days to dry depending on the humidity and airflow, so after I went back to work, the first layer had dried. But I was still keen on my idea of painting most of this painting in one layer, so I decided to paint another layer of the sky just so I could paint the top of the jungle seamlessly into the sky. Except you're gonna see in a few minutes why that wasn't a good idea. Next, I got to work on some of the palm trees which are visible in the distance, and I kind of got tired of filming, so I won't show the whole thing. Okay, here is the part that almost drove me mad. This huge cactus here was so hard to paint realistically because it's a bunch of thin vertical lines that blend into each other, and I had to paint a shadow for each individual cactus. The finished result is so beautiful, but man, that was really hard to do. Even if it wasn't perfect, I had to move on or else I would have thrown the painting out the window. But yeah, here she is in all her glory. Once I had pretty much finished the whole garden, it made me realize that the darks aren't dark enough and that it made it look like the lights weren't light enough. I also really like working with a spatula to apply thick paint and make the leaves pop. Finally, it was time to paint the crystal blue water, which I wanted to be one of the center points of the painting. But if you look at the reference photo, there's only a tiny part of the water that's visible, whereas in my painting, I made the water intentionally more visible because I find it beautiful. This is actually where a lot of issues came from later down the line, because in order to do that, I had to completely change the proportions of the painting, and unfortunately, I didn't realize how hard that would be to do. In reality, there are a lot of rules that must be respected when painting with the correct perspective, but I thought I would be able to ignore them or break them because I wanted my painting to be a bit abstract. Except there's nothing abstract about the way I paint. I have to stop being delusional about that. You guys, painting this big cactus was so fun, and I actually started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with this painting because I was able to paint it all in one go, and it didn't even have all those tiny annoying details. Like, even when I look back at myself painting this, I'm like, ooh, this looks so yummy to paint with how all the brush strokes are so effortlessly blending into each other. It's almost a nostalgic feeling, and this is what I want to feel when I paint all the time. I'm actually low-key having an epiphany while watching this back. Like, I need to change my painting style and do what I actually enjoy instead of choosing subjects that are so tiny and detailed. I like how what really gives the impression of bright sunlight hitting the peaks of the cactus is actually the huge contrast in value between the shadows and the light. After the big cactus was done, I moved on to some of the smaller plants at the forefront, which might seem insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but each one plays a very essential role in the overall appeal of the painting. By the way, the only reason I'm using gloves is because every time I end up getting paint on my hands, and I think the accumulated exposure to oil paint and turpentine on my skin isn't good, so that's why I started protecting myself more. On that note, I also found out that the cadmium yellow I'm using here can be toxic if inhaled, so I'm not gonna use it anymore. Oh my gosh, this was the part I was the most excited about painting. The actual story behind this elegant lady is that she caught my eye as I was rushing to leave because it was getting hot, and she was just there in this beautiful dress, standing in front of the main attraction, surrounded by all this lush vegetation, and I was like, no, this is perfect. I can't just walk past her without taking a picture. Like, this is destiny. I have to paint this. What's the most striking to me is that she's dressed in this timeless, classy manner with the straw hat and the white dress, and she almost looks like she's from another era, as if she came out of a Claude Monet painting. She symbolizes something greater because she thinks that she's capturing the beauty of the garden, but she doesn't know that she is that beauty that is being captured as well. Remember how I repainted the sky multiple times? Well, the paint ended up cracking because I didn't use any linseed oil, so here's how to fix that. You add linseed oil to the paint, which is going to act like a glue that's going to seep into the cracks and stick everything together. For the Majorel Blue, the tricky part was figuring out how to make it lighter in value without making it look gray or less vibrant. The best technique I found was to do a thin layer of a lighter ultramarine blue, let it dry, and then put a thin layer of a pure ultramarine blue on top. That's only purpose was to bring back the vibrancy of the color while still keeping the lightness of that lower layer. Next, I moved on to painting the big flower plant that's climbing onto the blue wall, and this one was more challenging to do than I thought because of all the little leaves. For the shadows, I learned that you have to go really dark because if the shadows aren't dark enough, then the light won't pop. It's almost like a metaphor for life. Like, how can you know the light if you've never seen the darkness? It was difficult to mix a bright, vibrant green with the colors I had, so I went to the art store again to try and find a vibrant green that's close to the real green of the plant, and these are the ones that I found. Also, I know that my setup isn't the greatest because I'm working in the corner of my living room in a space that's like 3 square feet, but you don't need to have perfect space to start a hobby. Every time I start a new painting, I try to improve something like getting a new easel or a little table, and that's how I level up and build up what I have, because small improvements over time lead to big improvements. The last step in my painting was adding these flowers and the final details, and since I wanted them to be vibrant magenta, I also had to do them in multiple layers using kind of the same technique as with the blue. And now I'm going to show you the final reveal of the painting, but before I do that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I know it takes me a really long time to edit and make these, so if you're still here, please leave a like and comment. It really helps motivate me to keep going if I know that at least someone is watching and enjoying these. Also, please subscribe because I have some exciting things coming, inshallah. So what do you guys think? Did I recreate the actual Majorel Blue?